Hi, Iyvon. I guess I'll start real quick. I'm just gonna give a talk. I'm gonna talk. I guess I'll just start real quick. Is anyone here Nigerian? All right, it's me. So I'm the tonight, which is amazing, and I'm honestly so just moved to see so many diverse faces who have read this book. I read it a few years ago when it first came out, and I think it was, one of the first books that really made me feel seen in a way that I don't think most Americans were able to see people who look like me. So I'm just gonna, read my paper and veer off sometimes. Bear with me. So again, thank you all. Thank you, Susan. Like Susan said, she met me last week at Cloud City, where there was an event that was curated on the topic of home. And my good friend Eric Holm was the curator of this event, and he hit me up on Facebook, and he asked me if I would like to write a short piece, a letter home. And he asked me this while I was actually away on my last few days on vacation in Switzerland. And Eric in particularly asked me because I travel very often. I actually am doing this 30 by 30 challenge. So 30 countries by the time I hit 30. So Switzerland and Liechtenstein, we're 22 and 23. So I'm really close, I'm really excited about it. Thank you. And I guess I was like drinking the Switzerland juice. So I was like, yeah, I can write a letter home. Like 3 minutes is nothing. It's gonna be so easy. Cue to Saturday, as I'm walking on stage, I'm literally still typing it. And I guess the reason that it was so hard to write about home was that I realized that home, in the moment I sat down to begin to speak this letter, that home was so much more entangled with my identity, more so than I tend to think about or care to think about in my day-to-day. And that's a really hard thing to unpack and untangle in 3 minutes. It's so difficult to write a letter to home, to write a letter to yourself. And so as I was formulating writing this letter, I had to think back about why Eric chose me to write this letter, which was because I travel so much. And I had to think about why I traveled a lot, and it was because I'm always trying to find home. And this all comes back to growing up. I grew up here in Bed-Stuy. I grew up in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn.
Yay.
I'm a Brooklyn girl.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I grew up in Brooklyn in the 90s, where people said it was very dangerous and it's this and that. And I loved growing up in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy. I love that community. I love the spirit of everyone's energy and the pride that we had. And I was a very, very happy kid. And my family, we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't get to go on vacations a lot. So we didn't really get to travel. I'm going to Disneyland for the first time, Disney World and Harry Potter World for the first time next week, and I'm like a kid. And so I had to keep thinking about, wow, this travel, like why do I need to travel? Why do I need to travel? And I thought back to when I won my Fulbright, and I lived in Italy for a year, and I was doing ethnographic research with African immigrants. And so I was talking and engaging with these communities who were moving and having to move because they were forced to. And here I was, and also as an African immigrant, kind of twice removed, I had this weird privilege that I didn't really get to ever suss out because I basically grew up American, and in America I was checked one box. I was black. And yes, I am black, but I'm also not black, and I think that's okay. But it's also something really hard to come to terms with. And I think Americana really gives a beautiful and guiding light to that struggle that a lot of people my age, a lot of people who have similar stories like me, I think it gave to light the struggles that we face, that again, that you guys may or may not always see. So I guess back to what I actually wrote. Thank y'all for bearing with me. So during my time in Italy, it was really great to see America, a place that I considered my de facto home, from a long distance away. It was utterly fascinating how Americans, we live their lives from those who reach and dream for our borders. And America began to seem a little less like home. And of course, I missed my friends and my family, and even though home was not always perfect from the inside out, it was special and it meant something. And coming to terms with writing about home, because it was a process, y'all. It was like a 2-week process to figure out what to write. I had to think about how I felt all my life, and all my life I felt like I've been an immigrant and a migrant. So I was born in Nigeria and moved here when I was 3 years old. And since then I feel like I've been in a constant state of never being fully settled, which means I'm never fully whole and I'm never fully accepted. So, and when you think of home, that should be a place where you are accepted, a place where your identity is accepted 100% without any doubts, and you feel safe and secure. I recently stumbled upon a New York Times article about young African artists. As we are blowing up in the entertainment media industry lately, which is amazing to see. And one of the artists in the article wrote, "The young African immigrant must locate herself along 3 divides. The first between blackness and whiteness, the second within blackness between native and foreign, and the third between African and American." Imagine having to deal with all of this your entire life. It's tiring. It's a beautiful experience, but it's also very, very difficult. And in Bed-Stuy, as again, it rings true in Americana, and I would like to give testimony to this. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, and although I loved it, I wasn't always accepted because I wasn't black enough. I would get called names like African booty scratcher, or I would get questions about like how big was my hut, or how many diseases I had. Just very jarring questions that as an African is just very hard to reconcile when the media shows one thing and only one thing about people who look like you, and all those people who look like you were still very different. And if I didn't know, like, the latest raps or anything like that, it was just kind of like, you're weird, and it's because you're African, it's because you're an immigrant, it's because of this, this, and this. And again, that's very, very hard to reconcile. And now with Africans, I'm not African enough because I am, American in my culture. I grew up here when I was 3. I don't really know a lot of like the latest African trends or what's happening in politics. So I'm not completely settled or whole there as well. And of course, it's obvious to hopefully everyone in this room that in the sphere of being an American right now, and with everything that's going on, it's really hard to be settled against, you know, where the state of our nation is right now, and with racial issues. Thanks for the stats. So, even though I did grow up here, my mother and father really did try to give us African values and instill in us this love and importance of knowing who we are and knowing where we came from. I feel like in the sphere of Blackness, I do have a privilege to know where my family is from, and that is something I can never take for granted. That I know the place where I can honor the people who came before me, and that is completely beautiful. And those are some of the things that's one thing, I guess, another thing that has reminded me of home. And I would just like to say, like, home for me is, you know, at this point, it's the whole world, because I'm going to go around the whole world. That's a fact. And this book is been so special to me, and Chimamanda has she really transformed me to the woman I am, into the feminist I am. I don't think I was really a feminist before her. And I think that she's created this book, again, that it's so special to see all of your faces here, listening and responding to the work, and again, coming to a deeper understanding of, you know, people like me. We're not really seen that often. We're glossed over, we're lumped together with people who have the same complexion, but a same complexion does not mean a shared culture. And I think this book really nailed that on the head. And so with that, thank you for listening.